Hello, and welcome back to Felony Spectator. I am your host, Heather. On today's episode, we're going to talk about Austin Harrouff. He was convicted of killing 2 people, and this case involves some serious mental illness and cannibalism. Yep, that's right. Cases like this just reinforce the fact that we don't have enough understanding of mental illness or support. I also don't want to insult people who have mental disabilities because there are a lot of people who live with mental illness and they do just fine. But this case is really just extreme and everything escalated really quickly. Let's begin. Austin Harrouff was 19 years old at the time of his arrest, but he would be described as an all-American teenager. He was born on December 21st, 1996 in Palm Beach Gardens, Florida, and also grew up in Florida where he had a seemingly normal childhood. His parents did divorce when he was about 13, but he recalls that while he didn't necessarily like it, he got used to it. So he lived with his mother primarily, but he did see his father as well. And as he got older, their relationship would improve and strengthen, so they started to spend more and more time together. While in high school, Austin played football, he wrestled, and he got really good grades. He attended Suncoast High School, and in 2015, he would graduate and go to college. He went to Florida State University, and he was looking to major in biology. While in university, things would start off normal. Classes were manageable, and he studied lots and played football there as well. And like any other college kid, he did party a little bit too. He also worked as a dental assistant at Palm Beach County Dental Practice. By August 2016, when Austin was only 19 years old, something had changed in him. He started to experience intrusive thoughts. And Austin actually told his mother about an evil presence in their home and that he was going to protect them. He would also go on to say that he had superpowers and was an immortal being. Austin would also start getting into unprovoked altercations with his dad. He would shoot at birds in the yard, and he just generally became a person that nobody really recognized. He literally was changing right before their eyes. Austin's sister would later admit that she started to even lock her bedroom door at night because she stopped trusting him, and she wasn't sure what Austin would do next. It's not said if his family tried to intervene at any point, but his thoughts would start getting worse and worse. On Friday, August 12th, Austin recalled that during his shift at work, he felt like Jesus. He talked to patients at the dental office where he worked about God, and he thought he had special abilities. He would bless the dental instruments and pour water on them. And it said that he was feeling love and joy and peace, and he had been feeling down a lot and depressed due to this evil presence. So this new feeling of love was just really, really welcoming for him. After work, when he got home, he flushed some drugs down the toilet that he had been using because he saw them as evil. Unfortunately, that happy feeling he experienced while at work wouldn't last. Later that night, he would hang out with his friends and remain sober, but he would feel paranoid the entire time. On Saturday, August 13th, the next day, Austin was feeling that God was still talking to him, but he was also feeling a little groggy. He would go on to say that he thought he had a special connection to animals and that he could hear what they were thinking. That afternoon, he got a ride from someone who owned a Dodge truck. And I'm assuming this was a friend, but it's not said who. But Austin thought that the ram symbol on the truck was the devil looking at him. His paranoia would start again that night, and he would sleep with his dog for protection. On Sunday, he says that while waking up with his dog next to him, he began to feel half dog, half person. And he would try and ignore it, and he would just hang out with his dad for the rest of the day. They went to a gun show, but the entire time he felt paranoid of spirits and thought that if he ate a snake, it would give him power over the devil, just like Adam and Eve. It's not said if he expressed these thoughts to his dad or if he just bottled them up and tagged along to the gun show. The following day, on August 15th, 2016, Austin started his day off by going for a walk with his dad, and they had planned to go for dinner at Duffy's Sports Grill in Juniper, Florida. While at dinner, Austin would leave abruptly because he was getting really agitated about something, so he would run on foot to his mother's house. While he was at his mom's, she would see him trying to drink Wesson cooking oil straight out of the bottle, which he apparently does not remember. His mother would tell him to stop, but then she would see him eating from a bowl that had cooking oil and cheese in it. His mother would drive him back to Duffy's sports bar, where Austin and his father would get into another confrontation. His father allegedly grabbed Austin by the shirt and told him to stop acting so strange. And instead of fighting more with his dad, Austin would leave the restaurant for a second time. Wade, his father, would call Mina, his mom, to tell her that he left again. And when they couldn't find Austin or get a hold of him, she would call the police.
Police Department, Lodge Recorded. Is this Chrissy?
Yes, I don't know how to do this. My son, he's kind of taken off, and I'm concerned about his own safety.
How old is he?
Acting a little strange. 19.
Does he live with you?
Yes.
Okay, what do you mean acting strange?
It seems like he's a little delusional, or like he's acting like.
Does he have a history of that or anything?
No, this is just like recent change,
mm-hmm.
and that we're noticing. And he was out to dinner with his dad today, and he took off. And we're just, he was with his sister, and he says, he feels immortal and like a superhero. So I don't know what's going on with him.
Do you know if he's been taking any drugs or anything like that?
Nothing. I've asked, and nothing recent.
Right.
That I know of.
So Austin was on foot, and he would be walking towards his dad's house this time. He would walk about 4 miles when he noticed the house of John and Michelle Stevens. Austin would then approach the Stevens house because he could see that the garage door was open and it was lit up. John Stevens was 59 and his wife Michelle Stevens was 53. And hanging out in their garage is where the Stevens would spend most of their evenings watching TV. And it wasn't your usual garage. They apparently had it decked out with a couch and a TV and a dartboard, and it was just a welcoming place for neighbors to pop in and say hi as well. It was just really a safe neighborhood, so spending time in their front yard in their garage really wasn't a big deal. But on this particular evening, while watching TV in their relaxing space, Austin would go up to John Stevens first and attack him with a pocket knife. Then he would go to Michelle Stevens and stab her as well several times. And that wasn't enough for Austin, though. He would then start grabbing items in the garage and brutally beat them to death. Austin would say that all he remembers is seeing a white face and black clothes that frightened him. He would also see a bright light, which he ran towards, and I assume this was probably the TV or the garage light. He does remember stabbing someone that was covered in darkness. The Stevens neighbor, Jeff Fisher, happened to hear screaming from across the street. And after taking a closer look, he would see his neighbors were in some sort of altercation. So he ran over to stop Austin from whatever it was that he was doing. Jeff, the neighbor, was also attacked by Austin. Austin would briefly stop and turn to Jeff and say, quote, "You don't want any of this," end quote. And as it turns out, he was also stabbed by Austin, and his injury was pretty bad. So much so that there was a trail of blood that led from the Stevens house all the way across the street to Jeff's house. Police also said that there was quite a bit of blood on the floor of Jeff's house as well. And when Jeff got back to his house, he did manage to call 911 to report the incident.
Police and medical. Young man beating up a woman across the street.
Are either of them injured? Can you tell from where you are?
Yes, there's a girl laying on the ground. He beat her up. I ran over there. I'm bleeding profusely here at the moment.
Okay.
I don't know what happened.
Can you tell if she's conscious?
No, it does not appear so, no.
The police arrived fairly quickly, and what they saw would just shock them all. Austin would be on top of John's body, and he'd be taking bites out of his head and growling like a dog. The officers tried to taser Austin to get him to stop, but it didn't work. It would take up to 4 police officers and being bitten by a police dog to pry Austin off of John. When they finally handcuffed Austin, he would scream, quote, "Just kill me," end quote. Austin was first taken to St. Mary's Medical Center in West Palm Beach and claimed that he ate something bad. And when asked what that was, he responded with humans. It's also believed that he did actually ingest something else from the garage because Austin's organs were failing. It's not said what that substance was, but he had to be put under sedation at the hospital and would remain in critical condition for over a week. After the incident, police did question Austin's mother at her home in Juniper, Florida, and she admitted to police that over the last few weeks, Austin's behavior had become increasingly erratic. She said some of his behavior was so bizarre that his sister recorded him on her phone. I don't know where these recordings are, but I'm just going to assume that they're going to be used in court. She mentioned the fact that Austin would tell them he was immortal and that he could solve people's problems, as well as that he was an animal. His sister said she walked in on him watching self-hypnosis videos on his computer, and his computer would show Google searches like, "How do you know if you've gone crazy?" or "What do you do if you've gone crazy?" or "Obsessive thoughts," and "How to sell your soul to the devil." And he even searched schizophrenia. When police questioned Wade, Austin's father, he said Austin was pretty agitated at the sports bar because his food didn't arrive fast enough. And he also admitted that Austin told his father that he was part animal. When they asked him if his son took drugs such as bath salts or flakka or something to make him so erratic, Wade finally admitted that while he didn't believe his son would take bath salts, there was schizophrenia in the family. During police interrogations, Austin would deny even remembering the incident at all. He couldn't remember attacking John and Michelle and couldn't explain why he would even do something like that. They did a blood test and they found him to have very small amounts of THC in his system and a little bit of alcohol. The police had originally thought perhaps Austin took something like bath salts or flakka, but his blood tests would show that he wasn't even under the influence of anything really, just that small amount of THC and that little amount of alcohol. Austin's recollection of the day would be a little worrisome. He said he pulled on a Michael Vick top that morning because he was told by dog spirits to do so. I had to Google Michael Vick because I didn't know who that was. He is a football player, so I'm assuming that this top was a jersey. Anyways, this top made him feel invincible. And he would say that even when he was with his father, he felt different, like the Grim Reaper, or that time was standing still. The only one clear thing that he remembers is holding a machete and stabbing a woman, but he blacked out, and the next thing he knew, he woke up in the hospital. Austin would be interviewed by psychologist Dr. Gregory Landrum, who was hired by the state to review Austin's mental state. Austin would tell this doctor that about a week before the incident, he was concerned about poor people, and he wanted to pay for meals for them and just feel extra generous. And he thought if he did well in life, things could work out for him. Sort of like karma, I guess. If he put out positivity, then he would get it back in return. But that night, he would be very paranoid. He also goes on to say that in high school, he experienced sleep paralysis, which I personally get, and it's not fun. As he got older, he would say in college, it would be more demonic, and he thought an evil presence was standing over him. He told his girlfriend in college that the devil was harassing him. The doctor said clinically his experiences are consistent with an individual diagnosed with mood disorders, but he was uncertain if Austin's were drug-induced or not. Austin informed the doctor that he had his first drink at the age of 17 And he remembers that it took the edge off from being shy, which I think a lot of us can relate to. And he would continue to drink occasionally, but by college, it was upwards of 3 times a week. He would also experience blackouts a lot when drinking, and he just couldn't control how much alcohol he could really tolerate. And he often woke up without knowing how he got there. And that happened 1 to 2 times a week. In college, he would also experiment with Vyvanse and Adderall, which helped him focus, and it made him feel very uplifting. However, they also made him stay up all night, which helped him study, but it would leave him really tired. He would experiment with other drugs as well, and thought that LSD and mushrooms never really worked for him, which was disappointing because he wanted to have a cool experience. And the courts did review his text messages as well, and they confirmed his use of Vyvanse and Adderall, but he did make several references to using mushrooms, snorting Adderall, and coke. He would get high daily on Adderall because he was bored. His messages also revealed that he tried meth, and he told his girlfriend that he was becoming a drug addict. On August 11th, 2016, he wrote, "I know that for me personally, the drugs are taking a toll on me and I can't handle it." And 2 days later, he would say, "The drugs made me vulnerable to evil." And that was just 2 days before the incident. Austin also appeared on the Dr. Phil show not long after. And on the show, it was said that he was diagnosed with clinical lycanthropy delusions, also known as werewolf syndrome. That's defined as a rare psychiatric syndrome that involves a delusion that the affected person can transform into or has transformed into an animal. I didn't look too deeply into this condition, but I did read that it's typically caused by other conditions such as schizophrenia, bipolar disorder, or severe clinical depression. Austin's dad was also on the Dr. Phil show in the same episode, and he was very, very emotional. He does believe that his son suffers from schizophrenia, and his dad seemed really so crushed that his son was responsible for something so awful. Wade, his father, even said that Austin was such a nice and gentle person. He was always concerned about the homeless, and he just wanted to help people. Austin would also say that he was sorry and he never wanted it to happen. And it's like a nightmare, and he just didn't even know how to put it into words.
What was in your mind that led to the incident? Did you feel at risk?
I saw a person named Daniel. I don't know if he was real or not, but he was a sketchy kid that was from my childhood. And he said, "Hey, Austin," and I panicked. And then I went to the nearest place to get help, and then I don't know what happened. I don't have a clear memory of it, so I wasn't intended with the goal of killing anybody.
I understand.
I never wanted to hurt anybody. I never wanted to go to jail. I never wanted to get in trouble. This is the hardest thing I've ever been through.
Did you get confused as to where you were because you turned one street before your father's street on your way home?
I saw Daniel, and I got panicked, and I got scared, and was looking for help, and I guess the nearest house was that house.
And Wade, do we have any idea if this Daniel person was anywhere in the vicinity, or was this all a hallucination?
It's a hallucination. Daniel hadn't been around here for 12 years.
12 years. I assumed as much. I just wanted to confirm that. So there was no Daniel.
Some people were calling Austin an actor, and he was more upset that he was in jail and being on TV was just a ploy. But I don't know, being on the Dr. Phil show is a bit weird, but I don't think he was really faking his mental illness. It's really hard to say. John Stevens' son, John Stevens IV, doesn't accept his apology, and he feels that Austin isn't telling the truth. Now, I don't know anything about the drugs he was taking, but from what I understand, lots of hallucinogenics make mental illness progress quicker for those starting to show signs of the illness like schizophrenia or bipolar disorder. And I mean, drugs really can mess up a neurotypical person, so to have a mental illness already just makes it so much worse. Austin apparently quit drugs cold turkey the night before and flushed them all down the toilet. And there wasn't drugs in his system, so this wasn't the case where he was making poor choices because he was high. And there are over 80 phone calls from jail that were released that show how Austin could go from upset about being in jail or joking or being a bit strange. He asked his father for a Bible, magazines, and a therapist.
What, baby?
Did you like seeing me yesterday?
Austin, absolutely. I wish I could be with you every day. Yep.
I feel like Austin is the only one that seems to know how ill he is, and his parents do seem supportive now, but I just wonder if there was denial that prevented Austin from getting help earlier. Like he tried to hypnotize himself and tried to Google about helping himself. On October 18th, 2020, Dr. Gregory Landrum did recommend that Austin meets the criteria for legal insanity at the time of the offense. His illness resulted in a psychotic episode so acute that 2 people were killed. The doctor did go on to say that research has shown that violence is increased in individuals with bipolar disorder who engage in substance abuse, even though drugs were not in Austin's system at the time. But despite there being a history of mental illness, Austin is being charged with 2 counts of first-degree murder, attempted murder, and burglary. Austin's lawyers did file an intent to use the insanity plea, but due to pleading insanity, they need to show without a reasonable doubt that Austin was actually insane during the time of the assault. So in March of 2020, a judge granted a motion to have another expert evaluate Austin. Prosecutors requested that Austin be evaluated by Michael Gamache, I think is how you say his name, a psychologist, which would be Austin's 3rd time going through this process. The last update I could find was June 18th, and there was charges of burglary of dwelling with an assault while armed, first-degree murder with a weapon, attempted first-degree murder with a weapon, second-degree murder with a weapon, and the status hearing is being held and scheduled for September 2021. So I'll have to give you guys an update later on. This case to me is really upsetting. The fact that Austin was Googling his symptoms and kind of had a hunch it was mental illness is frustrating because he could have asked for help. And why is asking for help so hard? The neighbor, Jeffrey Fisher, is also pressing charges for the attack he experienced as well at the hands of Austin. His lawsuit is written up a little differently because his lawyers are saying it was an intentional act, and Austin should have known his actions would result in suffering or distress. It lists that Jeffrey suffered bodily injury that resulted in pain and suffering, disability, disfigurement, inconvenience, mental anguish, loss of capacity for the enjoyment of life, incurred his medical expenses, suffered at the hands of Austin, suffered a physical handicap, suffered the loss of earnings and the ability to earn in the future. And he is looking for $30,000 and demands trial by jury. And from what I could see as of 2020, Austin pled the 5th in that case. And there has been people out there that have said they believe Austin is faking his illness. Do I agree? I don't know, and I don't think I do. It's hard. This is a hard one. I mean, I've never talked to the guy, but if you watch his old YouTube videos and just research the case, I feel like he actually was suffering a mental illness. And why would he fake mental illness? So that he could kill someone and eat them? Eating someone just sounds like mental illness to me. And his symptoms started before the tragic incident. If they had started after or started that day, then yes, I would probably think maybe he was faking it so that he could stay out of jail. Now, I'm going to assume his friends and family just thought he was getting high and that's why he was acting strange. because I didn't read anywhere that anyone really tried to find out what was going on with him. His father told him to stop acting weird, but that obviously doesn't work. His father even knew that mental illness runs in the family, so he really should have stepped up right away. Now, I know in Canada, sadly, it takes a lot to get help. You have to go to the doctor, get a referral to a psychologist, go on a wait list. There is a big process involved that usually takes some time. You can't just go to the hospital and ask for help either. Unless you're suicidal or exhibiting dangerous behavior, they often won't admit you. And I don't know what it's like in the States, but I assume that since you don't have free healthcare, that also puts lots of roadblocks up for mental health. It seems crazy to me that I can go get a massage and charge my benefits for it, but I can't go see a counselor or do much with my mental health without a referral or going on a wait list. We had a case like this in Canada that involved cannibalism and mental illness, and maybe you've heard of it. Vince Lee had an episode on a Greyhound bus and attacked Tim McLean. Tim also died, and Vince Lee didn't go to jail for very long and spent most of his time in a mental hospital for convicts. Once they determined that his medication was working, they deemed that he was no longer a threat, and he has been released. Now, I know the insanity charge makes it so you're not criminally responsible, but it's weird to think that the courts are just like that. Like they know it was an accident, so it's okay, you're fine now. Maybe I'll do an episode on that later on too. Anyways, I hope you guys liked today's episode, so stay tuned, hit the subscribe button so you don't miss another episode.